consideration and possible action to approve the purchase of 2 shipping containers to be placed at the Seminole State College baseball fields and reconstructed and refitted as concessions at a cost of $50,500 from proceeds of the May 2022 tornado insurance reimbursement funds.
So I got out here. One of the dangers of Sharon not being here is that half of my mind is gone from the room. So I got here without my laser pointer, but I did have, Sean did an excellent job of giving us a rendering. That's an actual overhead view of what we're going to be talking about in this project. So I think I sent out an email to you that indicated that the price tag for restoring our Little League baseball fields was going to be around $790,000, probably a little bit more than that when some of the other things are included. And the reason for that is the lighting. Most of that, about $690,000, is the lighting from Musco. It's just incredibly expensive. So we tried as a staff to develop a plan B, and we've come up with a plan, and we've kind of breached this or approached this with the Seminole State College Foundation. If you're not aware, there's a brand new baseball complex out on our northwest side. It's beautiful, and the kids are chomping at the bit to play on it. Fortunately for us, the 2 fields in the right, I guess you'd call it the lower and right, those 2 fields are lit. They actually have lights on them already. And so one of the challenges that we had last year, you'll recall this happened in May, the tornado happened May 4th. It was getting dark, and they really couldn't play the full league season that they needed to. They ended up trying to bump some of the softball facility around and maneuver. Fortunately, that they work well together so far, but it became pretty evident early that we were going to have a plan. So our plan is to move the Seminole Youth Baseball out to the new facility and play on turf grass. What that means is there will no longer be rainouts, there will only be lightning delays. So their season will go much quicker. They'll be able to play on the lit fields the vast majority of the time. At the top, between, you'll recognize that as a soccer field, and the one on the east is the high school, proposed high school baseball field. There's a very small field, and that was funded by the Vitas Foundation, and the plan would be to use that as a t-ball field. So you talk about an upgrade, those kids are going to think they're in Yankee Stadium. So we're really excited to be able to have that. It's just kind of a wonderful miracle that this thing was already in place, and it's not something that the city's looking at having to build as an alternate site. Let me explain what you're seeing in the picture. In order to make it operational for the youth baseball and for our kids and the community and the visitors that come to see it, come to play here locally, and what I mean by that is sometimes we pick up teams from Shawnee and Prague and Wewoka and Sissaquah. Sometimes Maud will come and play in our league. This is different than what we will be doing on the weekends. The weekends will be reserved for, I'm going to call it tournament baseball, where travel teams come from Arkansas and Texas. So all we're talking about tonight is preparing this for the local league. So you'll notice that there are orange areas and also in your legend out here to the side. That orange area near the middle ball field is a concrete pad. And the reason that we want to pour that concrete pad is we would like to set up a concession stand. And this would be in the function or in the form of a shipping container that has been converted for specifically the concession stand area. So that pad will hold a shipping container that is renovated to be a concession stand for our local league. In addition, just below that, you will see another small pad, and that small pad is going to be for restrooms. The only restroom facility on that complex isn't even in the frame here. It's uphill and approximately, I don't know, it's not quite half a mile, but
like
it might as
walking-
well be.
Walking from here to the armory.
Yeah, it might as well be. Yeah, that's a good analogy, John. It's like from here to the armory, uphill to go to the bathroom. So we're going to try to set a pad and some porta potties there. Now, one of the things that I showed you in your packet is we're planning on framing those up similar to what we've done at the Boomtown Playground. We want it to be very attractive. It needs to be appealing, not just for us, but for the out-of-town visitors. So even the concession, even though it's going to be a temporary or a storage container, we're going to put brick on the outside of it so that it looks professional and attractive. In addition to that, we need some storage space. We need to be able to do some things. Even though they're turf fields, there's still some maintenance stuff. For example, pitcher's mounds. Occasionally we'll have softball games out there. We have to be able to pull those pitcher's mounds up and put them somewhere that they don't walk away. So in the gray area, it's in your legend, and just above the just above the middle field, just north of the middle field, you'll see a gray line with a yellow container at the end of it. We want it kind of out of sight, but we want it accessible. If you walk out there today, that's all mud. And so we're going to pour some concrete, if approved. We'll pour concrete and another storage container that's bricked. So all of those containers are going to look attractive. So we believe that we can do this in-house and do it for around, what's my number, $50,500 versus $790,000 and we can't even get it ready for this season. So this gives us a great plan B, in my opinion, for our kids this year. We do intend to continue to use the Blake Auld complex, or what some will know as the old Little League facility. Those will be practice facilities, so they'll be able to still utilize them and get their practices in. But to a large degree, all the games, or vast majority of the games, are going to be played here. Part of that $50,500 will buy us some light trees. What's the official name, Chief? The light generator poles. Light tree. Does everybody know what I'm saying when I say a light tree? Okay.
No.
Okay, so it's basically a gas generator, a large gas generator that has a tree of lights or a stand of lights that come out of the top of it. You probably saw them during the tornado when we had them downtown, that shine light, basically for security reasons. This allows us to put the lights on the little field, the T-ball field, so that they'll be able to play, especially in the early season when it gets dark real early. They'll be able to play T-ball on those little fields under those light trees, rather than trying to erect a $150,000, $180,000 light pole. We're just going to buy some temporary stuff that can get us through, and that's what the part of the $50,000 request will do is get us some light trees for the T-ball fields. Other than that, I don't think I left anything out, but this helps us. In addition, we will be looking at leasing the complex. I think they gave us very favorable terms. So the plan is we will utilize the fields Monday through Thursday. So it allows them to have their big weekend tournaments, which they're going to make more money from them than they will us, for $12,000. So we're going to lease it for $12,000, but we're only being able to play Monday through Thursday. The only caveat to that is that field of their own for our, help me.
League of their own.
Thank you. League of their own. We'll be using that tiny field, and that's really what Avitas built that for, was a league of their own. And they'll be using that every Monday. So our T-ball will not be able to use Monday nights, but I think that's a great program anyway. So it'll be used and really neat. And I just need to thank the Seminole State College Educational Foundation for being cooperative. I think the price that they gave us was outstanding. For $12,000 a year, we're going to have a phenomenal turf surface for our kids to play on. So we're looking forward to it if you guys approve it. So that's all I have now.
Baseball will be very good to us. What about the complex here, just down the road? Those ball diamonds and stuff, will they still be functioning like they are now?
So you're talking about the softball quad?
Right down?
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's a softball quad. It's dirt infields, and that's typically, you can identify softball fields by dirt infields. And they do a great job. We're pretty pleased with the number of teams that are signing up, and those will remain softball fields. Now, in terms of, is your question about damage to those fields?
No, my question is, somehow or another, I got the impression that this was going to be in lieu of what we already have that we can't afford to fix or don't want to spend money on.
Okay. All right. So if you're familiar with the Euler Park area, you know where Euler Field is? So there are Little League fields, baseball fields located around that.
Right.
All of that was heavily damaged. The concession area was destroyed. The restrooms area downhill were destroyed. Much of the fencing was in a problem, and all of the lights were destroyed.
Okay.
So only that complex is what we're talking about using this as a.
I've got it. Thank you.
Mayor, I have many questions. So is this already built? This is a,
Yes, ma'am, that's an actual aerial. The only things that are not built are the colored items in that legend. Those are the things we are proposing to do.
and who owns this?
The Seminole State College Educational Foundation.
Okay. So the city council has not approved moving the Blake Auld fields permanently to this.
Negative.
So what you're asking, I think, or what you're proposing is that we take the tornado damage insurance money to fix Blake Auld, and instead of doing that, purpose it to this area, correct?
Yes.
But the ball fields would still be used for the teams to practice on.
For the local teams to practice on, correct? I'm very concerned about this being, you had mentioned that we get a lot of visitors, outside visitors for these tournaments and outside teams that come to play during regular season. What does that, have we looked at what that does for tourism for the city of Seminole? Because if you had those on the outskirts of town, people are able to, if they're coming from Shawnee, they're coming from Tecumseh, Prague, different areas, they don't have to come into town to go there. Blake Auld fields, they actually have to come into the center of town, which gets them closer to our downtown area, which gets them closer to our restaurants here. So if we're proposing to move that away and onto the outskirts of town, has anyone looked at or considered the fact that this is going to draw tourism and dollars away from the city?
Well, except we have a new motel going into town. We'll have a family fun center out there. I mean, there's things to try to keep them here instead of going back to Shawnee. You're right, you know, they're not necessarily going to be down at the ball fields, but they still have that opportunity to come into town to the restaurants if those are full. I mean, they're a mile and a half away. I mean, it's not that far, but it's, you know, it's really about what can we afford to do for the kids right now to get them to be able to play. And, you know, it is a nice asset for the city. It is in the city limits. It's not outside the city limits. So, you know, unless we can afford to fix those fields to where they can play at night, I mean, I guess we'd have tournaments on the weekends, but not in the evenings, and they wouldn't be playing, which they typically do when we have the full tournaments here. So, I mean, that's the struggle, is trying to figure out, if we want to keep it where it's at, then we have to come up with a lot of funding to be able to do that.
And Mayor, I appreciate that. What I do think, though, is if we're talking about $790,000, where did you get that estimate? And then two, shouldn't we have the opportunity to, through the budgeting process, to see if we want to put that towards Blake All to fix it, in addition to the tornado damage insurance money? So the $790,000, where did that come from?
Okay. I'm going to give you rough numbers. I didn't bring the full setup, but I do know that the Musco lighting from Shawnee Lighting Systems was $690,000 by itself to get just to repair what we lost. So, and then you're going to be looking at a minimum of probably $55,000 to $60,000 for the concession area to be rebuilt, and then the restroom facilities on top of that. And I think we could probably do most of the fencing in-house. So, you know, I think around $790,000 is going to be just for materials and things on top that we would need to bring back in, chemicals, things like that we're going to need to use. So 790 is a good figure, rough number.
So there hasn't been a request for a proposal for a bid to fix all of those things out there, correct? That's just research that you've done on your own?
Well, we've not competitively bid it. We have asked people to give us prices. So that's what we're going off of, is the contractors that gave us prices.
Okay. May I have another question?
Sure.
So you talked about the lease, and $12,000. Who would we lease that to, and has that process already been started? Because you already have a dollar amount. It sounds like maybe a proposal has already gone out for that.
So we're talking about leasing from, not leasing to. So the city would be leasing these fields from the Educational Foundation. And
So
that
we
price,
would be, okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
that price came from them to us.
Okay, so we would be paying them $12,000 a
Yes.
year to have those tournaments and things there. For use
The
of it,
league.
or the league.
Lease.
Okay. Mayor, I would like to ask that we have more consideration and discussion, because I'm a little concerned that I feel like we're already voting on, or there's an item on the agenda that has us paying for things to augment this existing property before we even consider doing away with what we already have. And I don't know if that's a motion to table this until we have more information.
It would be a motion. to
It would be a
table
motion.
if that's,
So,
But if we do that, They won't play this year, right?
We won't have time to get it ready. That's
Right.
right.
But they could play if they, because you said the lighting was the biggest issue. We could rent or purchase those, what did you call them? The lights with the box?
Yeah, the light stands or light trees. So the reason that we're talking about light trees is for the little kids, where the ball is moving 20 miles an hour. When you get into 8 years old and above, that thing is cracking at you, and you can't put enough foot candles high enough without blinding somebody. You can't put enough foot candles on the field without blinding them and be safe.
I just feel, even if it does move the season back, I just feel for the city, this just draws so much away from the center of our city. Again, away from downtown district, from our local restaurants and established shopping areas. And I think it just needs to have more consideration. So,
Well, most of our out-of-town teams aren't from Shawnee or Tecumseh. They're more Moss, Holdenville, Weleeka, from the east side, not the west side. Because they have leagues, they have 2 leagues over there, Lincoln County League and the Pot County League. So most of our stuff comes from the east.
Do we get some from as far away as Chickasha and places like that?
Well, probably in tournaments, yeah.
Downtown.
We've had teams come from Okema and play in the league. I don't know why.
I've talked to 2 restaurant owners, and they say they know when something's going on out there at the complex, because they said their business is double. Just because it's a mile and a half out of town, it's still in city limits. And I understand, I wanted to redo the old Boiler Ballpark. I mean, that was my dream. But boy, when you start looking at the numbers, you know, gotta look at the numbers.
I think that's my point, is we haven't looked at the numbers. We don't have anything in front of us.
$720,000?
790, actually.
Yeah.
And it was, there was no proposal sent out for bid. There's no numbers in front of me unless I don't have an attachment that's in front of me.
Let's take a vote to table it.
We have a motion on the floor. do
Yeah,
we
it's
not?
approved.
Did you make?
No, we have a motion, wasn't there a motion to approve this already, Jack?
Was that a motion?
No,
No.
there is no motion on the
No,
floor.
she has not made a motion, so I don't think.
Okay.
Well, I moved here from a larger town. 1.5 miles. Nobody thinks about it in terms of that when you go to Oklahoma City or Norman or places like that. 1.5 miles just down the street. So for people who are coming here to visit from out of town, I don't know that they wouldn't drive downtown to eat.
Well, they're not gonna drive to Tecumseh. They could go 1.5 miles and eat in Seminole.
Well, I know that, but an entrepreneur may start putting up things out there. And so in future, I would see it as being more of a threat to downtown brick and mortar restaurants, but we don't have that many anymore. Since COVID came, it just sort of wiped them out. And I don't know that they're ever coming back to downtown. I don't see the downtown area, I mean, it's in our ward, and I don't see it as being a commercial center in the future. I do think it's gonna be a place where you can have restaurants and specialty shops and things like that. And if we can promote enough of those things to draw people downtown to see some art, to see some, whatever. I'm not, I don't want anything to do with the restaurant business. I grew up in it for part of the time, and it's hard work. It's hard work. And y'all know that I'm immune to that. But I think that makes a good point. I hate for us to, not have baseball for the little kids, until next year. That's all it is.
That's my problem, is knocking these kids out of a year's worth. Man, when I was a little kid, I looked forward to that. We had 2 girls on our team. They looked as much forward as we did.
I know one thing, I coached Little League baseball for my kid ever since he was, 4 years old, 5 years old, all the way through 12 or whatever. We had spring sports, spring baseball. We had how many games scheduled? 12, 13, whatever. We probably played 5 because of the rain. Never could finish the season because of the mud. We were out there, we were pumping the water off the fields, we were squeeging the fields, we were doing all this stuff just to get one game in. This thing up here, you don't have to do none of that. You will finish your season. You will not have games that are rained out. We played in a little T-ball deal up there in Oklahoma City. Turf field, little T-ballers. We could hit it over the fence. Holy cow. We never, our smiles, we wanted to go back and play that again. We didn't get to. I think this is really special here. I want to make a motion, or I want to go ahead and make a motion to approve.
Mayor, I have a comment
Okay.
still. I don't disagree that this is outstanding. I don't disagree that it's, that it would be tough to have the season interrupted because of this. It was a natural disaster. That's something that we could control. But I do think that while what I'm hearing is that your primary concern is that there's a baseball game, I also think our business owners in town should also be considered. We're the city council, we're not the baseball council. And I really do think that our business owners should have time, and the downtown folks should have time to weigh in and visit with us. They are our constituents before we vote on something that I think is it's a pretty big issue. And I'm concerned, and I'm a little bit frustrated that this agenda item just kind of shows up just as matter-of-factly without us being able to have a discussion like this and being expected to vote with just a little bit of information.
What about the constituents, the little kids and their families are constituents?
So why I agree with that, absolutely. So if we had the chance to hear from our constituents, then we could make that decision. We haven't heard from the parents of the little kids, but we also haven't heard from the business owners. We haven't heard from anyone. We've heard an explanation from Steve, and that's it. And while I think it's, this looks great. My sons used to play baseball. I get it. But that's my concern, is we haven't heard from anyone. I'm not saying that we just do away with it completely. I'm saying we table it until we have more information. We have a chance to speak to our constituents, have them reach out to us, have a discussion before we make it seems like to me a pretty big vote on making some major changes to our city.
This is not going to be written in concrete. It's 1 year, is that correct? Right. 1 year. We can get those kids, then we have a year to work on exactly what you're saying, and I agree with you. But I don't want to knock these kids out of a year over $60,000, $70,000. That's kind of where I'm looking at it from.
Well, Mr. Mayor, most of the constituents that we're talking about are locals. This is for a local season. Those people are not going to drive out of town to eat someplace. They're people that live here already. We're not worried about people from Waleequa or anything like that. We're worried about citizens of Seminole, and they're not going to drive elsewhere to eat. If they're going to want to eat, they're going to drive the same place they always do. So I don't see hardly any impact on the business owners downtown to have league play at this facility.
What percentage of league play versus tournaments? It's a lot more league play than tournaments, right?
Yeah, it's every night.
Every night.
Until we get lights on all the fields, it's every night, but Fridays.
But it's Monday through Thursday.
Monday through Thursday, yes, sir.
Some Mondays excluded.
And I'll apologize for not getting this put together sooner. We're just doing what we can. We're taking as many bites as we can, chewing them as fast as we can. And this was a lot of work to put even this together.
You didn't call it Plan B.
With all the personalities involved to get it boiled down to something I could put in front of you. And so I apologize. If you tell me what information you'd like to have, I'll get it to you regardless of how we vote tonight.
What will be the consequence to the things that the negotiations that you made already and so forth, if we table it for a month?
None from my standpoint. I think the Seminole State College Educational Foundation, that offer stands firm, period. Now, what will happen is you'll have many other Preg or other leagues renting fields by the day. If they see weather coming in on Thursday night, they're going to call and say, we want to book that field for Friday or Thursday, Wednesday, whatever day it rains. Typically, now, our people are really good, especially the dads and John, are great at working those fields and having them ready maybe next day, probably 2 days later. So the fields will rent out from under us typically. That's one thing. Second thing is I think you will see a lot of our local teams that can afford it will sign up elsewhere. They're not going to go through another season where there aren't lighted fields. They're not going to try to get off work early at 3:30 like they were last year to make it to games. So I think you're going to have, and I don't venture a guess how many, but I would say those that can afford it will. And that's about the only real impact that I can see from delaying it.
So you're talking about $50,500 plus $12,000. So that's what we're talking about spending to have baseball for the little kids.
Yeah.
This
Plus
season.
12,000, I'm sorry,
Plus
12,000.
12,000.
That has not been approved, and that's not in this, so.
How many 62.5?
Yes, sir.
Right. And that will give us baseball to the little kids this year. And next year, we'll be looking at continuing this or getting our stuff together.
Yes, sir. My
So
plan was to discuss that in the budget work sessions and everybody get to weigh in. Do we want to spend that money? And we'll have it papered up for you, obviously, for the repairs that need to be made. And you guys will have the decision on, is this where we want to contribute the money, or do we go back out there and try that again? So
it's kind of like our car's broken and we want to go on vacation this year and don't rent a car. And it's going to cost
a lot
us
like that.
it's going to cost us $62.5, and we'll have those facilities still out there.
Yes, sir.
What happens with them?
Well, so not on the picture, the college already has a container out there. You'll notice that pad is large enough to host another yellow container. Their plan is to move that container down for their own concession stand to deal during tournaments. So the weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they'll use their own. The answer to your question is the things that can be collected and moved, the light trees, the storage containers, those things will go with us wherever we decide to go.
But the structure's going to stay.
Well,
No.
the concrete.
Well, and you're going to brick in the
The porta
containers,
potties,
the
yeah.
shipping containers.
Any fixture that's into the ground will stay. The porta potties, they're paying for, they being the educational foundation, so.
We get some kind of kudos for donating to them at the end of the season?
I'm
Might
sure
get a free
they'll,
pass to a ball game here.
I'm sure they'll give you an award if you attend the baseball banquet, yes.
I understand it.
The proceeds from the concessions go to who?
Those stay with the Seminole Youth Baseball League. And
Not to the
typically,
college. During the week, when we're playing the little leagues, that money stays with the little leagues.
yes,
Doesn't go to the college.
right. If they decide to charge gate, they keep the gate. If they being the Youth Baseball Association, any of the concessions stay with youth baseball. And
Yeah, we don't
if you know
charge
enough
gate
about,
during,
yeah,
How
it
important are the concessions?
they
pays for the umpires.
See,
It's $508 a night, counting the umpires and the concession people, a night,
that's jobs that you won't have if you don't have ball games.
right?
Sounds cheap to me.
I'm ready to vote.
Well, we have a motion on the table to accept this proposal made by Trace.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Tim Potlin,
Yes.
Larry Church,
Yes.
Trace Connor,
Yes.
Chris Hansen,
Yes.
Eddie Foreman,
Yes.
Dana Miller,
No.
John Kramer.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 4, consideration and possible action to approve the purchase of a 2010 Pierce fire engine for $200,000 from Firemaster Fire Equipment of Springfield, Missouri, a budgeted capital improvement project, item to be funded from the series